Have you ever loved something so deeply you were willing to bleed for it? They say the Aji forest is not a place but a being. It breathes. It listens. It remembers. Long before the white stones came to the cities, before iron machetes cut into the earth, the forest ruled. The people of Yumadim once prayed to the trees. They offered yams, songs, and silence. But when silence was no longer enough, the forest made its own demand. Once every 10 years, a girl must be given. Not to die, not to marry, but to disappear. They called it the blooming. A twisted word for a ritual soaked in fear. The chosen girl is always young, beautiful, unmarried. Some say it's the forest's way of keeping itself alive, feeding on spirit and blood. Others say there is a curse, a god thing buried deep in the forest's heart, waiting for his bride to come back. This year, the forest chose Alira. She heard her name in a dream before the elders ever spoke it. She'd been grinding bitterleaf outside her late mother's hut when the village bell rang, a sound that meant one thing: the choosing had begun. Her bones turned to sand. She knew they would call her. Alira had always been different. Her skin was dark and soft as ripe udara, her eyes sharp like the crescent moon over the yam barn. She spoke little, but when she did, even the market gossips fell quiet. Her mother, a feared herbalist, had died in her sleep 6 rains ago, whispering of things buried and forgotten. Her father, no one knew him. Some claimed he came from the forest. Others said he never existed at all. That evening, the elders came wrapped in crimson loincloths. They stood before her compound in a half-circle, faces solemn, lips sealed. The oldest woman among them, Mama Agadi, who was said to be over 100 years old, lifted her carved staff and pointed. "Elira Nwakigo," she said, voice like dry maize husks. "You have been chosen as the bride of the forest. Prepare." The silence afterward was heavier than thunder. They prepared her the next morning in the shrine house, naked but for palm oil and ash. Her body was washed in water steeped with bitter cola, her hair braided in spirals that spoke protection into her scalp. Around her neck, they placed cowries. At her ankles, bells. She wore no shoes, only white raffia woven by the last bride's sister. No one dared speak to her, not even her best friend, not even the women who once laughed with her at the river. Because once the forest picks you, you do not return. You become legend, or nothing. As twilight settled like a funeral cloth over the land, they led her to the forest's edge. Drums followed her, slow, deep, ancient. The wind stopped. Even the birds forgot to cry. She took her final steps alone. The path closed behind her. Inside the Aji forest, the light turned green and gold. Shadows stretched unnaturally long, and the air thickened like palm oil. Trees twisted in unnatural angles, leaves whispering in a language her skin somehow understood. Alira, it wasn't a voice. It was the forest speaking her name. She walked until the trees bent backward, forming an arch, and the air tasted of iron. There, under the massive ube tree, so wide 10 men could not wrap around it, he waited. Not a beast, not a god, not fully human either. He stood motionless, his tall form cloaked in leaves and thorns. Vines wrapped around his torso, like armor. His skin was the color of rich earth, scarred in places where bark had fused into flesh. His hair, long, matted and moss-streaked, hung like dreadlocked vines to his waist. On his brow rested a crown of living thorns, each one pulsing faintly as if breathing. And his eyes held pain older than language. He looked at her. She did not run. He did not speak. Instead, he reached out a hand, covered in small cuts from the thorns growing from his own wrists, and gently touched her cheek. The forest responded. Leaves fluttered wildly. Roots shifted. Somewhere, a flower bloomed that had not bloomed in centuries. Then silence. He stepped aside and motioned toward the base of the tree. A bed of moss, a circle of stones, a waiting place. She obeyed, not because of fear, but because something deep inside her recognized this moment. Like returning to a story you'd forgotten was your own. As she sat beneath the ube tree, the Thorn King sat across from her. A soft wind stirred between them. He watched her like one remembering a name once carved into a sacred drum. She closed her eyes and dreamed of fire. They say the trees in Aji do not forget. Not footsteps,
Not sorrow.
not betrayal. Alira lay curled beneath the great ube tree. The moss beneath her was warm, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. Her sleep was deep, but not silent. In her dreams, the forest whispered secrets in the rustling of leaves and the groaning of branches. She dreamed of fire, but not the kind that devours. This was a remembering fire, glowing red like the eyes of an ancestor, steady and ancient. It flickered around a river, and in it, a girl danced barefoot. Her laugh echoed through the tall raffia, wild and carefree. Her name was Nyana. Alira had never heard the name before, yet it was her name. In the dream, she saw a boy beside her, tall, shy, his hands always smelling of bark and palm sap. His name was Ikin the Grove Boy. He knew the language of roots and could speak to kola trees with just his breath. Nyana and Ikin loved in secret. Beneath moonlight, wrapped in vines, hidden from a village that feared too much beauty. She was the daughter of the river oracle. He was the son of a manless woman. They had nothing but their love and the song they sang together. If the wind forgets your name, I will remind it. But love in Yumadim has a price. That year, the yams failed. The rains came too late. The elders panicked. They blamed the forest. They blamed Ikin, the boy who lingered too long in the groves, who spoke to trees as though they were kin. They said he had brought a spirit bride to deceive Nyana. The punishment was swift. They dragged him to the sacred grove and tied him to the ube tree, the same tree Alira now slept beneath. They set the bark aflame. Nyana begged, screamed, swore that he was no demon, that he was hers. But love was not enough to change the elders' minds. As Ikin burned, Nyana did the unthinkable. She cursed the forest, not with words, but with grief. She tore her chest open with a sacred thorn and pressed her blood into the soil. "You took him," she whispered. "Then you will keep him, forever." The forest heard. It answered. It wrapped Ikin's soul in root and vine and thorn. It fed him sorrow until he forgot his name. It made him the guardian of the threshold between life and death. It made him the Thorn King. Nyana disappeared that day. Some say she drowned herself in the river. Others say the forest took her too. But now, centuries later, she had returned. Alira woke with tears on her cheeks and vines gently brushing her ankles like fingers tracing a memory. Across from her, the Thorn King stood silently. He had not moved all night, but something in his eyes had changed. The vines that once hung like armor now shifted restlessly, uncertain. He was remembering. He stepped forward, not as a beast, not as a god, but as something in between. He knelt before her and placed his hand on the ground. Where his palm touched the earth, a blood-red adenium flower bloomed instantly. He plucked it, thorns slicing his fingers, and held it out to her. "Nyana," he whispered. The name curled from his lips like smoke rising from a burial fire. Alira took the flower, her hand trembling. "No," she said softly, Alira. But something inside her answered. "I am both." The forest shifted. The sky above them darkened though the sun had not set. Wind whispered through the trees, but it was not gentle. It was jealous. The roots beneath her feet trembled. The ground pulsed. The Thorn King looked toward the east, where the trees thickened unnaturally. "They are waking," he said. "The ones who remember the curse." Alira's brows furrowed. "Who?" He turned to her, his face carved with sorrow. "The ancestors buried beneath the soil. They were fed by the grief that bound me. They grew twisted by centuries of silence. They do not want the curse to break." He looked at her now not as a stranger, but as a remnant of something once pure. "You are the key." Alira stood slowly. "Then let them come." But even as she said it, her heartbeat echoed like a drum in her ears. Because something else was waking in her. A memory deeper than blood. The power of the first curse. That night, the forest showed her more. She walked among trees that whispered her name in 100 voices. She saw flickers of her past life, songs sung into rivers, laughter shared under moonlight, the way Ikeen had kissed her palms before he went to gather bark for her medicine bowl. She also saw her own hands pouring blood into the soil. She had been both the lover and the destroyer. And now, reincarnated, she was both again. As dawn approached, Elira sat at the base of the Ube tree once more. The Thorn King returned from wherever the night had taken him. He knelt, eyes lowered. I remember. She reached for his face, brushing away a leaf stuck in his hair. And, do you forgive me? He didn't answer with words. He pressed his forehead to hers. And for a brief moment, the vines wrapped around them like an embrace, not to bind, but to protect. But deep beneath the forest floor, something stirred. The ancestors had heard, and they would not let love go unpunished. The Aji forest had never been quiet. Even when the wind was still and the leaves unmoving, the ground sang. But now the song had changed. It no longer hummed with memory and mourning. It throbbed, low and threatening, like the growl of a wounded animal too proud to die. Elira felt it beneath her bare feet as she walked. Not footsteps, but warnings. The Thorn King walked beside her in silence. His presence had softened since the blooming of the Adenium, but his crown still bled. With each step, drops of blood from his vines stained the earth red. They walked toward a place she had not seen in her dreams, a clearing thick with roots that seemed to breathe. Here, the ground pulsed harder. The air was heavy, thick with memory. They're watching us, he whispered. Elira, came a voice, deep and layered with many voices at once. Male, female, child, elder, all speaking through the same mouth of roots. Elira, child of the betrayer, child of your own past. The roots began to shift, parting like lips from the belly of the earth. From them emerged a spirit, half-formed, shaped from bark, teeth, and bone. Its face held multiple expressions: grief, rage, longing, and its voice pulled at her soul like fingers through hair.